Guess it's not dark enough, but I've never done one of the, or not light enough. So when you're walking down the street at night and you have the street lights on you, you can see your shadow. And if there's one light, you'll get one shadow. So let's say for an example that your back and forth reflection of, in this plane of existence, is light and dark. There's an off and on, like electricity in a computer, and then there's the light and the dark, the left and the right, and so on and so forth. So when you're walking down the street at night, you can see one shadow. If you have two lights, you see two shadows, three shadows, so on and so forth. Let's say that you go all the way into a 360 degrees surrounding you, like if you were inside of a sphere. If you're inside there, if you're inside the sphere, there's going to be 360 lights shown upon you, casting 360 shadows the other way. And you're the center point to where each light is focused and where each shadow is shown or reflected upon. So this is the light and the dark. You can dramatize it to angels and demons, but it's the core essence of what we would consider the closest thing to free will. Having the decision from 360 degrees. Where are you going to choose for each moment? And it's not good or bad. It's as life and death, or creation and destruction, are one and the same thing. Just another birth. So ask yourself, if there was a test, each angle would be one question. So you have 360 questions within this dimension, 360 universal truths to answer. This is purely poetic in a sense, that not to be taken literally, because people will science and math shit up, and it just doesn't work like that. That's not how paint works. So you have 360 degree angles, angels, lights, and darks that are what you exist as each time you wake up in the morning. Not only in this lifetime, but in lifetime, every time you wake up. So say that there were 360, if you were to live 360 years old, to make it as basic as possible, just as far as like conceptualizing it like an education system. There's 360 360 questions on the test, and it's not really a test so much that it's an experience. You're not taking the test because somebody's making you take the test. You're waking up in the morning because you're choosing to wake up in the morning. It's not to be equated to everything that happens during the day. It's in reference to the relationship that the conscious has with the subconscious. The linear and the non-linear. And how those are dancing that ultimately has no answer. It's worth doing the math. Just imagine if you have some people who hate math, then you have some people who love math, and it becomes their livelihood, science and stuff like this. This is what people call in the zone. When it's an extended moment, that's what we call in the zone. And then you have variations. 360, for example, 360 different energetic truths that represent that zone. So each zone, each question is another zone. Or question you're asking yourself. And whether you answer it this time or the next time, just for example purpose, understand, because I wanted to break down in a video this new age perspectives of ascension and awakening and enlightening, and how limiting the language is. Language is just so basic. And when you say something like, what is enlightenment, or what does it feel to be awakened, or it's just so basic. And if anybody gives you an answer for that, it's going to be basic. Because the question itself is basic. So that's why you have complexity in a realm where being comfortable and being in a meditative space is very simple. It's like order and chaos, but your free will, so-called free will choice in each moment. So one moment is choosing to wake up in the morning. Why did I wake up this morning? What do I gotta do? Oh, I gotta do that day. Oh, okay. I did that. Good day. And each day you learn something. And each day you did something that you didn't do exactly the same next day. Forever. So there's 360 questions from 360 angles and 360 shadows to help you see all that's in between this dualistic experience. And you will have people that take advantage of either side. Light, the dark, left or the right, both are extremes. But like a song being in harmony and, a song being in harmony and a note being in tune. Like that represents an entire day. These are all just for example purposes. Just a day. Shrink it down to a moment, shrink it down to an hour, shrink it down to a second, shrink it down to... That's your definition of time in this experience. And when you multiply all of those different angles, you come out with a number that actually is the pathway of infinity. So it's the physical with the non-physical. So, yeah, physical with the non-physical. Off and on, light and dark, left and right. But you're more complex than that, so there's more books to read when you choose to. Like non-physical books. That's a trip. So when we talk about like, oh, you're non-physical. Okay, well just imagine like what a non-physical you, what kind of non-physical you, what kind of non-physical book you would write from the non-physical you. Like, you know. Oh, shit, it's just funny. So yeah, Tess, it's like challenges in dreams. Like when you wake up in the morning, like you got stuff to do during the day. So when you go to sleep at night, that's a third of your life, so-called life. Like, so it still has an experience or a challenge or a meaning or a purpose. So in each dream, just like we can see here from the material realm, for example, the sphere that people still hold on to is the 360 degrees of like density to have an inner and outer. When you have a sphere in a 360 degree form, like by the numbers in physicality, then the core of that center of that sphere is it's in relation to the detail that went into creating the sphere on the outer. If the sphere has any abnormalities, the core will be warped from an angle perspective, meaning you won't be able to do the math. It'll be more difficult if you don't tune into the waking space and the dream space, the light and the dark, the off and the on, the masculine and the feminine. Non-physical masculine, non-physical feminine, non-physical nature, non-physical questions that challenge your reality. What would those questions be? Those questions will be a part of the 360 degree angles that make up that centerpiece. When people talk about oneness and light and dark, and just imagine, like, this is just like poetically what the Big Bang was trying to do, talk about oneness. Like, you're talking, and then they say, oh, you're stardust, or they say, oh, you're the universe then. So Like they're like, you need to be humble about that. Like you're the universe, but don't tell anybody when you're talking about like a single speck of frequency that represents an entire composition. So like an entire orchestra or something in one speck of time, like that's like the core center of a 360-degree composition that is who you are non-physically. So kind of like spheres, we're all kind of like spheres rolling around on the plane of existence. Huh. I was thinking, it's funny, I was thinking in my head, I can hear the song from Labyrinth going through my head right now. All the, it's only forever. It's not long at all. Man. Labyrinth. So yeah, you just 360-degree spheres because each light and dark has to be polished. It can't be too rigid and it can't be too soft. It needs to be polished to be able to move smoothly through the labyrinth, going back to the center, which is trying to understand the definition of time when it's just you waking up and going to sleep. Why you gotta make everything so complex with all the time? Like, who gave you the permission to tell me that this is what time it is? Who told you that? Who gave you the permission to tell me what time it is? I know what time it is. It's time that I'm awake, and it's time that I'm asleep. It's off and on. It's frequencies like a movie reel, creating a movie reel. So you're not just the movie reel, the movie that's being projected, but the theater and all the observers in relation to like Alan Watts was talking about in the last video about the beating of your heart and the breathing being voluntary or involuntary, and how the sun is shining and the moon is shining and the stars are flickering. Is that voluntary or involuntary? Like that damn refrigerator. That loud ass refrigerator is its own universe. It's its own universe. Because when it's off, man, you can hear the world. Any sound. That's what I was thinking about earlier while I was walking. So the same thing that goes with light, the same thing goes with dark. Or, well, obviously. But I meant to say sound. Same thing going on light and dark, and also sound. Off and on. The space in between that allows you to make a song. Otherwise, it's just, like Alan Watts described, just like boring, single tone, monotonous vibrations. So when you wake up in the morning, you gotta ask yourself, is that what you want to do today? your world. And then you do what you can every day, and then tomorrow you try to do what you didn't do the day before, in reference to the various angles that you have to work with in your 360-degree light and shadow. And the confirmation from that when I was walking was basically the whole point. It's like when you're walking, and just like you can see those different shadows coming from those various lights on the street. Only people who grew up in the streets know this. Not like it was in the streets, or it was just the street lights. It was easy. It was just a few street lights. This time walking. But you see the different light shadows. So you have like sound shadows and sounds. Yeah. Sound shadows and sound shadows, just like you have lights and shadows, or you have them in sounds. You have them in flavors too, like aromas and stuff. Which flavors? So you have. So in this light and dark, you have the feminine and the masculine. You have the balances in nature, and then you have your basic universal truths. Because like when you take a test, like I said earlier, if you took a test and there was 360 questions on there relating to the 360 angles of this dimension or whatever experience, each question is in reference to what you would get, how you would define 360 different universal truths from 360 perspectives. And the more you are aware of those and continually ask those questions and answer those questions, the easier it is to understand, from understanding to the closest to that core that you get, what's going on in the labyrinth that will allow you to intuit back to the center. Because if you mathematically try to do something, that's like mathematically trying to understand Jimi Hendrix. You see what gets lost there? So people do that to themselves every day when they buy into the mainstream reality that mathematically is designed to take away from part of your 360-degree angles and form you into a particular structure, a particular shape that is not conducive to a smooth movement through time. So they form you in a particular shape in order to profit from the design of the road that they have paved for you. So that goes into like an example of that would be like going to public school. Like, do you know what history is? from public school? The answer is no. The answer is no. So what is that history that is remaining in the 360-degree interpretation of understanding versus understanding and overstanding, or history, the past in relation to the present and the future, and the present moment and the future, and so on and so forth there. So from a space that is just getting closer to a definition of what a moment is, what a moment is. Mathematically, musically, and in relation to the stars flickering in the sky, the sun moving on its own clock. As I asked before, who are you to tell me what time it is? Who tells the sun what time it is? Who tells the moon what time it is? Who tells the oceans what time it is? The tides, the weather, the air, temperature. It's not as simple as on and off like a light switch. Oh, you turn the light on, or you turn the heater on, it gets hot. You turn it off, it gets cold. No. Math, music compositions are more complex than that. The good ones, at least. Like a good balance in food or wine or art, colors, personalities, balance. Wonderful balance. It's so beautiful to see a very strong, confident woman. Just like the balance in the fight to make each breath count. Like each reason you wake up in the morning. For what? For what, and then for why. Or excuse me, for how. How and then why. What? How and why. And the why is like the paint. And you got like math and science. It's like 1 + 1, A, B, C, D, language and language of numbers, language of paint. So it's closer and closer to something that is undefinable in reference to somebody painting something. Like, you can't scientifically quantify that. You can't mathematically quantify that. It's a different world. It's a different sphere. And people are built up of these different spheres. So these 360 angles in this density are only able to move around freely. Just imagine if you were to have a flat plane with a bunch of spheres on it and you just rolled them around. And then, like those in the exploratorium, the sand, where you can write in the sand with like a pendulum. It's a reflection of the other angle it came from. And it makes a painting or a sand something. But that's your painting of the day. It's what you wrote in the day. It's what your language you formed in the day. And that's why you woke up this morning.